Let's just go straight to the interview with Erin. You're going into your junior year?
Mm-hmm. And I want to go to grad school in educational psychology.
You had a number of different interests, including medical. You were thinking about being a med student. So what made you recently kind of decided to go into, to pursue ed psych, or what? Because that's quite natural to have a number of different interests. How did you decide?
I took a course last May it was just an introductory developmental psychology course. And the teacher is an educational psychologist. And I was the girl who every day would come in with the textbook filled with Post-it flags where I had read through the material we were supposed to read that night or whatever. And I had a million questions. I would email her a list of probably 20 or 30 questions per reading assignment. So we got together point blank one day. I said, okay, so what do you do? And, she told me about her research projects, about how she got into, teaching at the university level, how, she got into graduate school, what she did. So she had a lot of experience, but I also had a lot of experience that I didn't know I had, that I didn't know that could be classified as experience in the field of psychology.
And what was that?
During my senior year of high school, I was a teacher's apprentice in the special ed department. I completed a 360-hour internship.
So how did you get this internship then?
I applied through the school system. You could take, for instance, 3 classes a day and then teach for 3 hours a day. And that's what I did because I wanted to really figure out what I wanted to do. Psychology is a field that they do look for prior experiences that are applied. Programs want you to already have research experience. They want you to already be doing your thing.
A lot of students anticipate that they need some kind of work experience, but research experience, I think, is something they don't know that's something that would really put them ahead if they had that. So how did you get this research experience?
I was a part of a 10-year study. It's still going on. It studies the social emotional behaviors of children in Head Start programs. I went to the professor who has the lab and basically said, look, I don't have any of your prereqs, but here's the experience that I do have. We sat down and we had a formal interview.
So she had a spot? Was it a paying?
It was just, we got class credit for it. You put in hours and hours and hours and all you get is class credit. I think that's where students mess up is, no, you don't just get class credit. You get all kinds of insight into what it's like to run a lab, to do all those kinds of things, because there were days I was there at 7:30 in the morning.
And what were you asked to do?
We did a lot of video coding. Previous semester, they had videoed the children in several different scenarios, like playing and doing typical activities. And we were asked to code videos based on their behaviors.
Interesting. So you would do this, and then you'd go to your classes, and this was during your sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, this is going to be something, it's a life experience, and you've identified an area of psychology that you want to work with, so it's helping you decide on which direction to go in, as well as something you can put on your resume and talk about when you go to interview for grad school.
Exactly.
You're very active. Found you on Twitter, and I imagine you're that way in real life. You're a communicator. You're out there talking, and you're, meeting people.
Absolutely. I'm going to be the one that gets into grad school via Twitter. I'm convinced, because I've met a lot of professors, and I've met one in particular who's a professor in educational psychology, and he has a copy of my CV. One of the other important things is they tell you to come up with, a specific research interest. So I don't think it's as important when applying to graduate school to have a very specific zeroed-in interest. For instance, the interest that I'm exploring this fall is language development and cross-cultural adoption in children ages 0 to 7. I started becoming really interested in language development. And then I started becoming really interested in adoption and how that works and how that affects children. And then I started thinking, well, what's an appropriate age frame? And so it came sort of in pieces.
And how do you get those? Where do those pieces come from?
With me, it came from talking to professionals, seeing what they research. And I just kept talking and I kept asking questions and I kept figuring out, okay, what do I want to do? The reason I like Twitter is because it challenges me to put things in 140 characters or less. So if I can't get it out in 140 characters, it's obviously not precise enough. So you have to be to the point with Twitter, and I think that's a good lesson for prospective graduate students, is just to learn that you've got to talk, but you've got to be really specific because, as you mentioned, psychology is very competitive, and that's a good way to do it. Brevity is a great way to compete. A graduate committee isn't going to sit there for hours and hours and hours reading your 4-page CV. They're going to sit there for 5 hours reading 10 other students' 4-page CV, and it's just important to be able to put your most important foot forward.
They'll read all your stuff, which will give them an impression, but they're going to walk with, okay, so she's the one who's interested in, or he's the one who's interested in, and if they can put it in a sentence or so, then it'll stick in their minds and they'll be able to say, okay, that's who that person is. Rather than, I'm not quite sure if I know who this person is. I don't think that person really knows who she is. Let's go on to the next person.
Right. I know in our undergraduate psych program, they tell you've got to narrow down your interest, and that's what they preach. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I think well-roundedness is well spoken for in psychology in general. I think that if you were to know one thing about one thing only, you would be really boring.
It's also good to have a variety of stuff on your resume so they can see that you're active in life.